Alright, so I'm going to try the favorite authors challenge or whatever. I saw it on YouTube. I'm back to recording by myself, something new. I'm actually going to pretend that I'm talking to my friend Kevin, and I'm sending him a message, and hopefully that'll kind of help. So it's sort of like a survey or something. It's called a tag, and it's going to be 6 not quite favorite authors, 4 authors that maybe could be my favorites, and then a top 5 that are in order of my favorite authors. So I'm going to start. And this is actually one of the tougher ones. I'm putting Kafka in my not quite favorite. He is one of my favorite authors. The reason I put him in the not quite is just the fact that none of his novels are finished, and I really feel like having things that are sketches that were put together, as great as they are, I don't feel like I ever got to read like a real Kafka novel the way that maybe he intended. The Castle is, like, to me, one of the darkest and funniest books I ever read. Love it. The next not quite, I'm going with Denis Diderot. He wrote Jacques the Fatalist, Rameau's nephew. He was like the editor of the French Encyclopedia. And he's sort of like this mad scientist he was a contemporary of Voltaire. He did so many experimental, strange things. Like in Jacques the Fatalist, he talks to the reader. The narrator's talking to the reader. Very like postmodern by today's standards. There's nothing like really huge by him. I'll just stop there. I really like him. He's on the not quite. Daphne, get back. That's a cat. Truman Capote. One of I have very fond memories and feelings of him. His books are just so warm, and kind of remind me of like a childhood wonder. I picked out The Grass Harp, which is one of my favorites. But like Thanksgiving Visitor and Christmas Memory, like at this point I read them every year. Next, I'm going with Plutarch. I spent a couple years almost exclusively reading Plutarch. He was a Greek biographer. He wrote the lives of kind of Greek heroic characters and Roman figures. And I still go back to them all the time. I mean, they're biographies in sort of a older sense. He talks about like morality and things like that. But it's fantastic. Like he's got biographies on Alexander the Great, Theseus, and Romulus, Pyrrhus. I mean, it just goes. There's dozens of them, and they're really, really wonderful. And it's kind of a 2-for-1 because like this thing's also translated by John Dryden. There you go. Next one, I'm going with Italo Calvino. He's an Italian writer, and he's so much fun to read. He's experimental, crystal clear prose. I took out my Cosmicomics, and it's like science fiction, or this book anyway. It's actually really sort of the only science fiction that I really, really enjoy to read. But I love them, like Invisible Cities. If on a Winter's Night, A Traveler. It's great. And we're going to complete this with Donald Bartholomew. Just one of my favorite short story writers. Just some of them are just like a few pages long, and they're brilliant. And to me, it's sort of amazing that you could read like 2 pages of something and it becomes a memorable story that, like, at least I've never forgotten. The School is one of the best short stories. It's about a classroom where they keep bringing in things for the kids to take care of, and everything keeps dying. So there's like trees and goldfish and whatever. It's also very philosophical. He probably would be one of my absolute favorites if his novels were a little bit stronger. I'm not a big fan of his longer work. On to the maybes. So we're going to start off with just one of my favorite authors, Samuel Beckett, famous for Waiting for Godot, but it's his novels that just kill me. This is his trilogy. It's, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. Just the most striking prose that I've ever read. I mean, it's incomparable how beautiful and terrifying it is. And he's hilarious. He's so funny. So that's that. Moving on, this is the only woman on the list, which I considered, but I don't know. So George Eliot, which I have a very long and strange relationship with her. I picked up Middlemarch, which when I was like 17 or 18, I hated. I mean, I don't know if I even finished the book. It was just so terrible. And I picked it up in my early 30s, and I was just blown away by how marvelous she is. I went on to read a couple of other works. They're pastoral, but the morality and the ethics of the characters and the amount of philosophy that she's able to put into her books is astounding. And beautiful. I mean, just a beautiful prose writer. And she could easily turn into one of my absolute favorites. Like, I feel like she's a writer that gets better with age for me. Next, this is the third on my maybe, and we're on to Homer. And he probably would not be on this list if it wasn't for Emily Wilson. She just recently translated the Odyssey, and rereading it again just made me realize how much I enjoy reading multiple translations of the same work. I'm not really astute enough to make real comparisons, but every time a new translation comes out, it's like being able to read a whole new book through a different lens. And I just love it. I mean, I've been reading Homer for as long as I can remember. One of my favorites. And the last on my maybe list, I'm going with William Wordsworth, which, Kevin, if you're still watching, might surprise you. And the reason is that this past year, I just keep going back. Like, I'm constantly picking it up. I picked up his Prelude, which is like a kind of like an autobiographical poem. It's like a little book. And from what I gather, it's a poem that he wrote for his friend Coleridge, which I love. So Wordsworth is becoming very dear to me. So now we're on to my favorites, and the rule is that now they're in order. Um, this is sort of the difficult part. I had writers that that got excluded off the list altogether because I couldn't even put them in the other categories. But here are my five. I'm going to start off with W.B. Yeats. It's one of my favorite poets. I kind of love the longevity. As he got older, his writing got kind of stronger and more brutal. So I picked up to the show Wild Swans at Cool. One of my favorite poems is Circus Animals' Desertion. It's really kind of I don't want to say inspiring, but kind of where you find your idea. The poem is sort of where do you find your ideas from, and I love it. I also say one of the main reasons I picked this up, or made it to my number 5, is his plays. And I almost never hear about his plays at all, and they're stunning and strange. So, Yeats. Number 4 is Thomas Hardy. It's one of Jude the Obscure is one of the first books that I read. Maybe I don't know, when I was younger, that I kind of fell in love with. I mean, I actually found it to be a very funny book until it becomes very unfunny. But it's very dark, tragic, and the other reason he's on number 4 is for his poetry. He's a wonderful poet. Great, just great language. So that's that. That's that. Number 3, I'm going with Guy de Maupassant. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And now we're kind of in that upper level. I love everything that I've ever read by him, and he wrote dozens and dozens of short stories. He has a handful of fantastic novels. He has kind of travelogues and journals, and he's just brilliant. Everything that he wrote is brilliant. Bellamy, which is such a great novel, and his little novellas, like a life about kind of a poor woman. Anyway, Guy de Maupassant was number 3. Number 2. Flaubert, Gustave Flaubert. It's funny, Maupassant has stacks of things that he's written. Flaubert's got, I don't know, 4 or 5 novels, something like that. Maybe it gives you an idea of how he can still tower, in my opinion, tower over other great writers. Madame Bovary and A Sentimental Education. But the book that I picked up is Bouvard and Picochet, which is a comic novel. And it's one of the, I remember howling through this book. It's about these 2 idiots that come into money and decide that they're going to start learning all the different aspects of sciences and arts, and everything leads to a pitfall. It explodes in their face, but really, really funny. And yeah, I love Flaubert. Number 1. Kevin, if you're still watching, this probably will not surprise you, but I can't pick anyone other than Dostoevsky. Mainly for the Karamazov brothers, which just is the best book. It's the most stunning book, most stunning character study. The characters are real people that I know. And I've read it a handful of times. I end up liking different characters at different stages of my life. Um, just wonderful and dark and funny. Dostoevsky is a really funny writer. If anyone's ever read The Crocodile, it's a short story. It's hilarious. Like a government clerk gets swallowed up by a crocodile and doesn't really want to come out. He's fine in there. It's really funny. So, all right, I've made it this far, so that's my list. So I'm gonna wrap up. Thank you for watching. Let me know how I did all by myself. I'd like to be able to do more videos, and this could be a way to do it. So thank you for watching.